Someone has tagged me to a photograph of what appears to be his share. It's a sack of rice. Well, I cannot hear his audio. I'm going to be able to listen to it after our chat with Widad Taleb, who is joining us from Dubai. If you're still okay, good. It's very interesting. So someone on Twitter has tagged me to his share or someone else's share of his or her palliative, and I'm hoping it's not going to be a very disheartening update, given that many people have told us of what appears to be something tangible that they have gotten from the government, while others particularly in disbelief as to, say, the quantity or value of the quantity that they may have received from the government. So this conversation is a moving story. We will follow up with it as we find more information on it. All right, so it's day 5 of the air, naval, and artillery strikes from Israel into Gaza. Well, the Palestinians are really having to suffer the weight of Israeli military force, and it's really a tragedy to behold. And to even contemplate the possibility that the Israeli government is saying that it would get worse breaks every onlooking eye. This particular situation began on Saturday when Hamas launched its largest attack on Israeli territory in decades, blowing up part of the country's highly fortified separation fence and sending fighters into Israeli communities along the Gaza frontier. Well, the situation appears to be quickly degrading. The death toll keeps rising by the moment, and we're not even sure if the figures are correct. To help us look into this is CNN reporter joining us from Dubai, Widad Taleb. It's so good to have back on the show again this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Of course, you're welcome.
So death toll. Are these figures nearly accurate? What can you tell us about the figures out of Palestine?
It's a bit hard to tell regarding the figures because there is no official entity giving out those figures from the Gaza Strip. We're talking about the Palestinian side here. But, from the preliminary numbers that we're getting from people in Gaza reporting those numbers, it has reached over 600 deaths in the past few days, unfortunately, due to the very heavy missile attacks from the Israeli side onto the Gaza Strip.
Now, we're not even sure how terrible life for Palestinians have become. We hear the Israeli government supplies Palestine water, food, electricity, fuel, and I think on Monday, the Israeli government decided to shut everything down. What can you tell us?
So this is an extremely detrimental situation for the Palestinians. When a state imposes economic limitations or resource limitations on a certain area, especially we're talking about an area that's already battling poverty, unemployment, a lack of resources, and an informal economy. So that paired with a cut off of water supplies, resources, food, and aid, results in a sort of a catastrophic, inhumane scenario. We're talking about, electricity cuts, which will impact directly, first and foremost, hospitals in Gaza, where, people are mostly in need of that right now because of all of the injured, civilians over there that are in need of first aid response and hospitalization. So that put, the Palestinian people in a very, very dangerous situation. We're talking about an impacted education sector. Once these cuts are come into impact, a lot of people are going to get impacted from this. We're talking about food insecurity. We're talking about social unrest. We're talking about displacement. It's important to note that Gaza has experienced a lot of periodic disruptions in electricity, water, and food supplies due to various factors. But this time, it's detrimental. It's extremely detrimental. And
I hate to interrupt you. The news is reporting Israeli minister orders full blockade of Gaza, cutting off food, water, and medical supplies.
Exactly. Yes, I had seen that just before coming on the show with you. I mean, this is detrimental. It's catastrophic for the Palestinians.
It does quite appear that is the intent of the Israeli government, because I hear the Israeli government say that by the time this is over, there will be no Hamas. Do you think that the Israeli government is considering civilians? Because it was reported that refugee camps were targeted, or refugee shelters were targeted. What update do you have for us on that one?
Not only that, I have someone who got in contact with me from Gaza just now, just before I got on the show with you. If you don't mind, I would like to read what he
Please.
had sent me.
Sure.
He said that Israelis are persistent with firing all these missiles. They're targeting mosques during prayer times. They're targeting houses with civilians inside without prior warning. They're using phosphorus bombs, which is actually, that's a war crime. If it's used on civilians, it's not supposed to be used on civilians. They're destroying towers and media centers in Gaza. They're basically committing war crimes. So even yesterday, they just formed an emergency cabinet in Israel just to kind of escalate the situation. So what we're seeing in Palestine right now is truly unprecedented. It's violating a lot of war crimes and just purely, honestly, unacceptable what's happening right now.
Yeah, the UN is saying that Israel is practically warring this time around, and their method of war is against international standards. I want to touch on the fact that Hamas on Monday made a media briefing, and they did say that Israel is specifically targeting civilians, women and children, without prior warning. Hamas spokesperson did say to the world that if Israel continues to bomb innocent civilians, that they would now begin the executions of Israelis in captivity. It is looking gory by the hour, and it's left to anyone's imagination where it can go.
Exactly. And I mean, if that were to happen, because reports are coming in even today that children are, getting affected from this and dying, even women. So, I mean, they are. So it seems like they're targeting civilians because, as I have noticed from people who are reporting live from Gaza and sending in those reports, they generally tend to send a prior warning for people to evacuate that specific area, and then they proceed to bomb a different area than the area they had initially warned to bomb about. And this came in today live on a live Instagram from a reporter who is based in Gaza speaking about it. She's a girl. She's a 22-year-old girl, a journalist who was speaking about this specific aspect. So if that were to happen, and if, as Hamas said on Monday, that they would start executing, on camera, I don't know to what extent that might escalate to, because this has never been, we've never seen this before. And, besides the current escalation that's currently happening, that is a whole different thing if it happens.
Wow. It bothers, I think, the world, the UN, America. By the way, we hear that America intended to send aircraft and ships. It does quite appear it did already. It did. Okay. Now, pardon me, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I said they did send a ship.
Oh, okay.
That did already.
Okay. Now, the EU did issue a statement yesterday that they would suspend monies or aid to Palestine. Then a few hours later, they appeared to want to work it back. I don't know if you have any updates on that. And it's very interesting because they say that they are in support of Israel, but they're against Hamas. And it seems as though every time the West tells this story, they put Hamas and Palestine in the same reference point. So what update do you have? Is it actually true that the EU is suspending aid to Palestine?
So on the last time I was with you on the show, I was telling you that the EU was one of the biggest aid givers to Palestine. They did take that decision to suspend that aid, and then they did. It is true that they did reverse that decision to resume that aid, but I'm not sure about the amount of aid that's going to be pouring into Palestine, how it's going to come in, because Israel is very keen on blocking out any sort of aid that is to come into the Gaza Strip. They even attempted to do so to aid that was coming in from Egypt. So I'm not sure about the pragmatic ability for Europe to do so at this time with all of this escalation going on.
Well, Palestinians were hoping that they could find some exit point, given that Gaza is practically going to hell and people would at least want to escape the destruction. But yesterday it was reported that Israel made an announcement asking people to evacuate Gaza. And some Palestinians intended to evacuate going through Rafah crossing And soon after the announcement came, Rafah crossing was blown up. It's a little confusing. Can you clarify what exactly is happening here?
I think that honestly portrays the method that the Israelis are using. They're not being very transparent about, the war that's going on right now. The Palestinians tried to escape. What you're saying is 100% accurate. They did tell them to evacuate Gaza, and not just from one area. They also tried to evacuate from the south of Palestine, and they actually also fired rockets at both portals of where Palestinians were trying to escape, to flee their lives. There's families in there, there's children, there's women, there's elderly that are losing their lives by the tens and hundreds every single day. So what you just said honestly does nothing but portray what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. It was initially enticed or initiated by Hamas, but it's really important to note that this is all a reaction to the main subject that people seem to not truly grasp or comprehend, which is the Israeli occupation that was forced upon the Palestinians, where hundreds of thousands were forcefully exiled from their homes in 1948 during the Nakba, when a lot of people, we're talking thousands of people, were presumed dead at the time, and where a lot of war crimes were committed. So we're talking about a country that has been facing this kind of oppression for it's almost about a century right now. Yeah, it's honestly, we cannot blame the Palestinians for retaliating in this manner because of all of the events that have been unfolding throughout the years. What they've seen, a lot would say that we've had enough of what we've seen. We have the right to return to our home. We have the right to retain our land, to regain the sovereign independence of our land. And a lot of people just can't blame them.
Yeah. So we're hearing somehow that the south of Lebanon is somehow making a feature in the story. Islamic Jihad is also making a feature in the story. What's the link?
So the Islamic Jihad you're talking about, responsible to kind of get Israel out of Lebanon during that time. There has been a back and forth of missiles on the southern borders of Lebanon, and people are afraid of how that will escalate because there has been prior similar scenarios that have happened in Lebanon, in the country. And Lebanon is known for being one of the very few Arab states that openly and clearly oppose the Israeli occupation. And people are afraid, and as I told you just before we were on air, there's a lot of precautionary measures that are being taken in Lebanon right now. People are wondering where they're going to go should that war start. Also in Lebanon, on the borders of Lebanon, there has also been some attacks from the Syrian side. So we're really concerned about how much expansion. Yeah, so we're concerned about
your family in Lebanon. What are some of the things coming out from your own family, given that we don't know how crazy this may implode?
I was just on the phone with my dad. My dad's currently not in Lebanon, he's in another country. And I was just on the phone with him, me being in Dubai, my family being in Lebanon. We were discussing about who has a visa to get out should anything break out in Lebanon. So it turns out that my brother and sister have no visas, yet my mom and my other brother do have visas. So now we're in the process of making new visas for my brother and sister to get out should anything happen. We're worried that usually the first thing they target is the airport. So we're worried that something like that might escalate. We hope it doesn't, but there's a lot of speculation from political analysts and experts on the matter that this might escalate to a unprecedented scenario. I'm also supposed to go to Lebanon next week, and all of my friends, my colleague journalists over there, my connections in terms of analysts and experts, even some sources I have in the military institutions, they are telling me not to come to Lebanon right now. So the situation is totally unclear, and there are a bit of worries when it comes to that.
Okay, I have a final question for you, which is that Palestinians are accusing the world, or I would say the West specifically, of hypocrisy. Why is that? Is it that the West hasn't supported them as much as they have supported Israel? Is it that maybe the West tends to be somewhat selective with their version of this? And it's particularly delicate when Israel is referred to as an apartheid state. And here we're
Yeah.
dealing with what might be somewhat colonial in one breath, and then in the other part appears to be Hamas using Palestine or Palestinians as a shield. So it's somewhat complex. How do you work your way through it?
So it's a bit challenging, and it's tricky to work through that, because a lot of people in the West that I have seen in the past few days are in support of the Palestinian conflict. We're talking about Australians, we're talking about Europeans, we're talking about even Americans who are purely like from those states and not like expats who are living in those states, who are in full support of the Palestinian cause. And then we also have another segment of society. We're talking purely civilians here. We're not talking about governments who are opposing that because of misinformation or because of not enough extensive knowledge on what's going on in Palestine or how it all unfolded in 1948, when Israel first occupied that land. And when in terms of governments not supporting, I mean, Palestinians have every right to say, not a lot of people are supporting us, because that is the reality. You have, the United States of America, and you have some of the European countries that are in full support of Israel and Israel's being there. So, yeah, I mean, it is kind of tricky to work through it. And when it comes to Hamas specifically, not all Palestinians agree with Hamas, but all of them agree on one thing, which is this is the only resistance military group that is fully capable of protecting us and capable of fighting for what we all want, even though not all of them politically agree with what Hamas is doing. It is pragmatically the only tool available for Palestinians right now to kind of break free from what's happening, and it is kind of tricky. It's tricky to work through.
Okay, so I want your thought on what could have been a potential political deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But now with this breakdown or degradation of a situation happening between Israel and Palestine, some say that deal is up in the air. Now, what kind of buzz are you getting from Arab Nation? Are they in support? Is there a tendency that they may want this to, maybe they don't want it to escalate, but they'll be willing to come back up Palestine if something pushes something else?
So definitely, I mean, I have seen, support being sent from the United Arab Emirates to the Palestinians. I think it was $20 million. So I have, I've seen even like Saudi Arabia issued a statement, its foreign ministry issued a statement saying that we are in full support of the Palestinian rights. Following, this is only after like a few weeks of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman's Fox interview, where he said that normalization with Israel is a possibility and it could be a reality very soon. I think that because of what's unfolding right now in the area, this is suspended, and there was also reports yesterday about this specific aspect, the normalization between Saudi and Israel being suspended until further notice, until they see how things are going to unfold, whether the Palestinians are going to get a little bit of what's left of their rights or not. And I think that the conditions of the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel now are going to be more intensified and are going to be a bit harder for the Israelis to comply with, because one of the most important conditions of that normalization is a peace plan that to be done between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And seeing that everything is unfolding the way it is, this could be an indicator of a suspension of that normalization, as per what I've been hearing.
Well, you have been wonderful. Thank you very much, and I'm glad that you are safe. It's a moving story. I do intend to have you back at the situation unravel. We're hoping it comes to an end sooner than later, but whatever happens, we'd like to get your view and some updates regarding the war between Israel and Palestine. Thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate. Lagos, Nigeria, we have been speaking with Widad Taleb, and she joined us from Dubai. You can feel, if you're watching the television, the terrible situation between Palestine and Israel. It is particularly tragic when you begin to comprehend, say, a statement from the Israeli government towards Palestine and how much damage appears to be reported. And I must also at this point state, we are not comprehending, rather vaguely, what may be the loss to Palestinians and even Israel, but more to Palestine, given that Israel is a greater nation, a stronger nation, in that the strongest nation in that region in comparison to Palestine, who's been dispossessed through the years. One is left to wonder how dark the night may still be for Palestine. As the situation continues to change and shift, we do promise to update you with information as we have it. We're off on a break. We'll be right back. My name is Joyce. Our guest was Widad Taleb, and we'll intend to have her back at some future time, depending on how the situation unravels. My name's Joyce. We're off on a break.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to the channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria.